Okay, hello, and welcome back. This is our second video in the series. And in the first video, we didn't do much. It still took a little while to get started. All we really did is crack open Rhino for the very first time, take a look at the procedure for setting up the units of measure and also the absolute tolerance on a new file. And then we went through using the options panel to just, confirm all those things are set up right. And now in this video, I'm going to focus on just running through the interface of the program. And that's all of these buttons and different panels that you see staring at you here when you first open the program. So if you're a brand new user, this should be a little bit intimidating. I mean, there's a lot going on as far as what you see when you open up Rhino for the first time. So I'm going to try to break it down into specific sections and just explain what each little section does, and hopefully it'll make a little bit more sense after we're done here. Okay. Also, I went through the procedure of saving out the new file that we did make and just having a copy of that on my desktop. We saved a 3DM file, which is a standard Rhino file. And I guess a good place to start will be just up at the upper right hand corner here. What you see at the very top of this page is your selection of drop down menus. So any tool that you want to use in Rhino or any function that you want to perform can be achieved through or found through this menu up here at the top. Okay, everything kind of lives up here. So you notice that you've got like curve, surface, solid. These are all drop downs that you can then go to and then find different tools inside the program. Notice how they correspond to different toolbars. These are toolbars here in the middle of the screen, and there's things like the standard toolbar, but then you've also got like curve tools, surface tools, solid tools. You see that? So you've got individual buttons for curves, or you've got drop downs for curves. Okay, surfaces, same thing. You got drop downs for surfaces, or you've got buttons for surfaces. Okay, so that's the first thing to know about the interface of Rhino, is that you have several different ways of finding a tool. You can either go through the drop down menu up here at the top, or you can go to the toolbar tab and find the button that corresponds to what you want to use at the time. So that is that. Okay. The other thing that you can do to find a tool, if you don't want to find the button and you can't find it in the drop down, is you can use this thing right here. This is your command line. And you can type in the name. If you can remember the name of a tool you want to use, you can type in the name to the command line here and hit the enter button, and it will give you a list of all the tools in Rhino that kind of line up with that. We'll just go ahead here and I'll just type in just a quick one here. I guess we just type in circle, CI. I'll just get to CI, and all of a sudden, look what happens. Rhino gives me a list of all the tools it thinks I might be talking about, and then it gives me a link to the circle tool right there. Okay, and so by clicking on this, I would turn on the circle tool and be able to draw a bunch of circles. Okay, as I drew those circles up here at the top, this white area up here, this is your command area, and it's going to capture a recording of every single move that you make in the program. So in the last video I told you, we opened up a new document, we set the units, we saved the file, and that's all that happened, right? It was a pretty boring video, but take a look at the command line here. It's got a record of every little thing that we did. See up here at the top, it looks like we opened up document properties, then we opened up the options a few times, looks like 3 times, and then we performed the save command here, and then Rhino wrote the new file, the 3DM file, and there's the record of that right there. See, so as you're working in Rhino, this area up here will take record of everything that you do, and you can use it to your advantage if if you're in a good flow and you're moving quick, something starts to go wrong, or for some reason you want to look back on some move you made earlier in the process, then you can use this this panel up here to kind of see what went down. Okay, there's a slider over here on the right, so you can kind of we can slide up and actually see this is when Rhino started the file, This is the new document that we made. And then we opened up the properties and so on until we finally saved out the final file. Okay. So this is really helpful for new users, and as you start to experiment with different tools in the program, you're going to want to know, you're just going to forget, like, what was I doing 15 minutes ago, and why isn't this thing working now? And you can kind of sift back through these instructions and see what happened. So okay, so there you go. So as I mentioned, you got buttons and you got drop downs. You got to kind of ask yourself, you do some soul searching here, and what kind of designer are you? Are you more of a visual person? Are you going to remember an icon or a button more than the location of a drop down menu, right? So the way to figure that out, if you don't know yet, is to try both multiple times and see which one just feels better. There should be one way or another that's going to feel a little bit better to you, and so that's perfectly okay. There is no right way to go and find a tool in Rhino. It's all about kind of building your own workflow with the program, and that discovery is what's going to make you the best designer you can be. So okay, so moving on down the page, right, we've got, as I mentioned, we've got these tabs, these toolbar tabs here, and there's quite a few of them. I'm not going to go through every tool in each one because there's literally hundreds. But over here on the left side, we've got our side toolbar here, and it should be in 2 rows like this. Remember what I mentioned before, that the entire interface here is really adjustable, so you can click and drag on a lot of this stuff, and you can change it to be any size that you want. So do your best, I think, just as we're starting off here, to kind of get your interface to match the look of mine, because mine is set to the default right now, and it really goes for anything here. The layers tab over here on the side can be adjusted. Everything can be kind of pushed and pulled around, and that's the sort of thing that's kind of difficult to put back together at the end of the day. So it's easy to change it. It's harder to get it back to where it was when it started. So let's just kind of tighten this up a little bit and see how far we can get before it overlaps. You see that? So okay, so the other thing to talk about as far as this side toolbar here, most of the work we're going to do for the first part of this class is going to be using this this toolbar, or the toolbar that's displayed when we have the standard tab selected. But notice, if you just go through the trouble of just clicking through some of these tabs, once you get to some of these here, like curve toolbars, surface tools, solid tools, notice the side toolbar changes to a collection of tools that correspond to solid or surface or curve tools. So that thing can change on you, so it's good to just kind of memorize which ones are going to cause it to change, and what you get when you are clicked on that tab. So that's why I say, for the first part of the class and for new users, I say most of the work is going to be done on the standard tab here. So that's that. Okay. Now, on the right side, we've got layers, and we'll get into using layers later on. We're going to organize all of our different surfaces and curves and construction curves, and everything's going to be organized into layers, and that's going to come into play also later when we get into doing rendering and so on. Just being able to organize your file so that it can have multiple materials applied to it. That all happens here in the layers panel. You notice there's a default panel, or sorry, a default layer, and then you've got should have at least 5 stock layers that come with it. You don't need that many, but we'll get there. Then you got a properties tab. It'll tell you properties about what you're building once you start building something. Display tab's kind of the same thing. Doesn't really count until you start to build stuff. But then you've got a help tab here. Hopefully you got a help tab. You can right click on any of the tabs and select different tabs to be shown, or you can hide other tabs by just unchecking them. So if I uncheck help and then right click and recheck help, it'll show up again. The help tab in Rhino is actually super helpful. Unlike other programs like Photoshop and even SolidWorks, the help menu is kind of like, what's it for? In Rhino, it comes in handy quite a bit. If there's a tool you want to use and you don't really know how to use it, you can go ahead and just type the name in. For example, I'll just type in here, I'll just type in polyline or I'll start to type polyline. You'll see how that works, right? Rhino recognizes the start of the word I'm trying to punch in, and it gives me a selection of all the tools in the program that can correspond to that. So there's polyline, and you can see once I type the word in there, I get quite a bit of information about it. First, I get this little fun video that's going to show kind of what it looks like when it's being used. And then I get just different sort of steps on how to use it, different notes on best practice, different options that are going to pop up, more videos. There's just a wealth of information that comes up on the help menu. And the most important one, I think, is this here. Where can I find this command? You click on that, and it will give you the location of that tool within the program and within all the various ways of finding a tool. So like I said, you can go for buttons, and it'll tell you the toolbar that you can find it under. You can go for drop-down menus, and it'll tell you the drop-down menu location. So for polyline, it looks like we go to the curve command, which is here, and then we go down to polyline, and then we go to polyline. And we can also get to these other polyline type tools through that drop-down as well. Okay. And the button for it, as it mentions right here, is sitting right there, polyline, and it's also here as well. So multiple locations to find it depending on what tab you're on, and depending on whether or not you're going to be into using drop downs or not. So that's one thing about Rhino that I'm not sure I love too much, but once you get used to it, it's not that bad, is that there's just multiples of everything everywhere. So it gets cluttered pretty quick, in my opinion, but makes it kind of easy to find. You kind of stumble onto stuff pretty easy after you get some good hours in on the program. Okay, so I've got quite a bit to cover just as far as what you see. I mean, like I said, this is a complicated interface. So the help menu's there. There's also a help drop down as well. If you go to help here and then you go to help topics, that'll bring up the same help command, but it'll do it in its own little window here. That's got the additional luxury of having things like favorites, where you can save favorite tools that you look up all the time. And it's got options, and you can also print information about a tool if you want to, I don't know, print it and pin it up on your wall or something like that if you're at that level of who knows what. So moving right on here, let's see here. I got some notes on stuff I want to cover. Down at the bottom, we've got some snaps on just, once we start to draw some stuff, this will all make a little bit more sense. But I mentioned before where you can go to find out the units of your file. But down here, I've got some snaps that just correspond to, you know, how you operate different tools inside of the program. So as you're starting to draw line work, you're going to either want to snap to the grid that you see here, or you're going to snap to other line work you've already drawn, or sometimes you'll be snapping lines to surfaces or surfaces to surfaces, and all of that is going to happen down here. So these are all little kind of conditions that you can turn on and turn off. So if they're highlighted like that, they're turned on. This would be grid snap, and then there's object snap, and then there's gumball also. So I usually like to have grid snap and gumball on most of the time, and we're going to talk about what all that is probably in our next video. Yeah, I think that's about it. So I mean, I've kind of hinted a little bit at, you know, the concept of customization. Well, kind of not going to put too much effort into showing you how to customize you know, the interface here, because it's a theory of mine that, or it's I guess it's kind of a concern of mine, that someday I'm going to get a job where they're going to, you know, read that I know how to use Rhino, and they'll plop me down in front of a stock version of Rhino. And if I'm used to using a customized version, if I'm used to having all sets of custom presets, and then suddenly I find myself without those, then I could be lost for a little while. So I like to teach the program stock, and so I don't put too much work into customizing stuff, but you totally can customize everything in here. You can even make your own icons for different tools inside the program. If you just click here in this blank space with a right click, you can go to new button and make your own buttons. There's all sorts, you can edit buttons. I mean, there's infinite amount of customization that you can do here. So in the next video, I'm going to start talking about navigation, how you can move around this 3D space, and I'm going to talk more about these 4 viewports that are staring at you here. And we'll probably get into the fun part of actually putting down some line work and moving around in 3D in the next video. So this is 15 minutes, guys, just explaining what everything is here. Honestly, I appreciate you sticking with me as I just kind of drone on through all this stuff. It is important, and the best way to memorize all this stuff is to just get to work. And so hopefully we'll be doing that in the next video. So anyway, thanks a lot for watching. Okay, bye-bye.